The Nutty Professor is a 1963 comedy directed and written by Jerry Lewis and starring Jerry Lewis and Stella Stevens, as a timid, nearsighted chemistry teacher discovers a magical potion that can transform him into a suave and handsome Romeo. Paramount presents this film with a new 4K restoration with Dolby Vision and HDR10. What is up, everybody? Welcome back to the Mid-Level Media channel, your hub for everything physical media and entertainment. I'm Ken, and today, guys, we are here to talk about 1963's The Nutty Professor. Not the Eddie Murphy Nutty Professor that came out in 1996, but the original starring Jerry Lewis that came out in 1963. So yeah, of course, this one I feel like is the most notable. I feel like if you ask people, if you reference the Nutty Professor, they're going to think of the Eddie Murphy one. Now, me personally, I grew up watching both of these movies like at the same time, and I thought there was enough differences there that I could enjoy them both on their own merit. But it's definitely a very similar story. But if you've never seen this original, I definitely encourage you to go watch it. But we're going to talk about it here today. Of course, we're going to talk about the movie, the transfer, the special features. And I wasn't sure if I was going to do like a full review on this one, but after I watched it and dug into the special features, there was enough there for me that I really wanted to kind of, talk about. Like, I think Paramount Presents is really coming into their own with this line, and this release in particular, like, I'm really excited for their future now based on this release, and I want to talk about that a little bit here today. But look, before we get into it, hit the subscribe button if you haven't already, hit that like button, and then comment down below, guys, what's your thoughts on the 1963 version of The Nutty Professor. Is this your favorite version of the story, or do you like the Eddie Murphy one? I would say most people like the Eddie Murphy one the best, but this one definitely has its fans as well. So which side do you lie? Let me know in the comment section below. Also, let me know if you plan on purchasing this. I'm going to leave the link down below for purchase. This is $34.99 right now, which is a bit pricey, I will say, but we're gonna dig into it, guys, and I'm gonna let you know if it's worth that price point. So diving into the movie a little bit first, like I said, I grew up with this movie. I can't quite remember which one I watched first. I want to say that I watched this one first. Like, my sister was a massive, and I got to give credit to my sister, like, just for me being a movie fan in general. Like, I watched a lot of stuff with her growing up, but she loved Jerry Lewis. So we watched The Nutty Professor and Cinderfella like all the time on VHS. So, and I love both of those movies. I wish that Cinderfella, I don't know if that's Paramount or not. I'd have to look into it, but that would be awesome if that got a 4K release as well. But we watched all those movies all the time, so I really loved this movie growing up. And then the 1996 version of The Nutty Professor came out, and I fell in love with that movie as well. And I will say, I think that this one definitely just goes for it a little bit more with the comedy. I think the comedy, I don't want to say it ages better, but it resonates with me a little bit better. It's more of the kind of like, 90s raunchy style of comedy. I just love that era of comedy, like Jim Carrey, Eddie Murphy, Adam Sandler just really own that era. And this is like Eddie Murphy's definitive comedy of the 90s, I would say. So I love the Nutty Professor from 1996, but this one still holds up very well in my opinion. I wasn't sure how it was going to hold up because it's been a long time since I've seen it. But I loved it. Like, I love Jerry Lewis's performance in this movie. He's playing both Professor Kelp in this movie, but in the, of course, the Nutty Professor from 1996, Eddie Murphy's version, it's Clump. So he's Kelp in this one. But I love his portrayal, and he's not the main difference between this and the Eddie Murphy one is Eddie Murphy's overweight in the, the recent Nutty Professor, or the newer Nutty Professor. He's an overweight guy. And his personality, I think, is kind of similar to Buddy Love, which his name's Buddy Love in this movie as well. His personality in that is kind of similar to Buddy Love, I would say. I mean, Buddy Love's definitely more confident, but like, you can tell that they're kind of the same person. In this, like, the shift from Professor Kelp to Buddy Love is so drastic that it honestly feels like two completely different people. So Eddie Murphy's overweight, kind of wearing a fat suit in The Nutty Professor. In this one, he's just a nerd. Like, he's just a super nerd. He talks like this. He has this real, like, nerdy voice. But then when he turns into Buddy Love, he's just super suave and charismatic. And I think that Jerry Lewis just pulls off that shift so wonderfully in this movie. Like, you just buy him as both versions. Like, you buy him as this super nerd. You buy him as this, like, super cool and charismatic, like, guy, like the most charismatic guy in the room. I love the the scene where he's first introduced and he's walking through the street and everybody just turns, it's super exaggerated, but everybody turns and looks at him, and he walks into the nightclub, the Purple Pit. Everybody just looks at him and gasps. Like, it's such a great introduction to the character. And then he walks over and he's singing to the bartender as he's like trying to get him to make him the right drink. And he's the coolest guy in the room. And I think that Jerry Lewis just pulls off the performance so well. But this is really, like, Jerry Lewis also wrote this movie, and he got this idea, of course, from Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde. Like, he was a big fan of that story, so he kind of adapted that into his own version, and he definitely makes it his own. Like, I think this movie stands on its own from the, you know, classic Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde story. The cast in this movie is also great. Like, I love Stella Stevens in this movie. Like, she is a knockout, absolutely beautiful. Just something about classic actresses when you watch them. There's such a beauty and elegance there, and like Stella Stevens just embodies like every bit of that. I don't know her too much from anything else, but man, she was good. She's beautiful in this movie. I'll just say it. Her performance is just so good, and I love her chemistry with you know, Professor Kelp, but also Buddy Love. She has to kind of be, you know, she has to kind of be good with both of those different personalities in the movie, and I think she pulls that off very well. So as for a movie, I think this still holds up. I think that in 2023, 60 years later, this movie's celebrating its 60th anniversary. I think that you will still really enjoy this movie, and if you're a fan of the Eddie Murphy movie, you're definitely going to find some enjoyment here, and just kind of like picking out the differences between the two. Like, if you didn't even know this movie existed, like you just knew about the Eddie Murphy one, like this one's going to be a trip for you to watch, because a lot of the same beats are there, but there's definitely some differences for sure. But yeah, really enjoyed the rewatch of this movie. As for an actual film itself, guys, look, it may be a lot of nostalgia, but I'll probably end up giving this a 4 out of a 5. I still really enjoy the movie, even though it has some goofier aspects about it. But getting into let's talk about the meat of this release, guys. The reason you're really buying it, and that's the 4K restoration. Now, I did not own the last Blu-ray release that I believe came out in 2013, 2014. That was the 50th anniversary edition. There was like a big box set release I was seeing online as well. And a lot of those special features, I'm pretty sure every single one of those special features are present in this release right here, which we'll get into here in a second. But I didn't see that Blu-ray, but I have to imagine that this 4K looks substantially better than that Blu-ray release that came out 10 years ago, because this is honestly, like I said it with Thelma and Louise, but this was a beautiful 4K transfer, one of the best that I've seen all year. Like, I don't know, Paramount Presents, to me, I feel like they're definitely more hit than miss. It just feels like Paramount puts a lot more effort into these releases than they do just their regular studio releases. I don't know, like, what's the difference, if they have a different team that's working on them. But this is a 4K restoration, native 4K restoration with Dolby Vision HDR10, and I thought this looked extremely beautiful throughout. Like I talked about Blue Hawaii, the Elvis movie that came out last year in 4K from Paramount Presents. That was a top 5 of 2022 4K release for me, and this was right up there with it. This looked so beautiful, and I think that what makes this really pop and is why, like, if you're thinking about the Nutty Professor, the Jerry Lewis movie, and you're like, why do I need to upgrade that in 4K? That's just a silly old, you know, comedy with Jerry Lewis. And the main reason that I think you should upgrade this one is all of the beautiful colors in this movie. This movie is extremely colorful. Like, this was, you know, of course shot in Technicolor, but Jerry Lewis just really put a lot of effort into adding a lot of different colors throughout this movie. So they all look so great with that HDR. Everything in this movie pops. But you know, you have the classroom and you have the laboratory with all the different colored potions and stuff, and they're all this, like, you know, greens and purples and pinks and stuff. Like, it all looks like the cover of this release right here, the artwork on the cover, which I love. But there's all kinds of that kind of stuff, and even the classroom with like the green on the chalkboard and just the outfits that all the students are wearing. When you get to the Purple Pit stuff, like in the actual like nightclub where all the students hang out, and Jerry Lewis is playing the piano and stuff, like when you get to that Purple Pit nightclub, it is, you know, all the walls are purple. There's a lot of pinks in there. There's a lot of colors in there, and that stands out like no other. Like, it looks so great when you get to those scenes in that nightclub. And again, everybody's wearing these real like colorful outfits, and all of that stuff just really stands out and really pops with the addition of that HDR. So I think that this may be one of the most worth it 4K upgrades for me that's come out this year, because of all of these just extremely colorful and vibrant scenes that you get all throughout this movie. And I just think that they all look fantastic. As for the actual like clarity of the movie in 4K. Like, it looks magnificent. Like, everything is just like Thelma and Louise, guys. Like, everything's so crystal clear. Everything looks great. It's so insane to me sometimes when I think about it. It's like these movies are 60 years old. This is not how they were watching it back in 1960. And it's just so amazing that we have the technology to clean these up to this level and make them look like this. Like, I imagine people that watched this back in the 60s are watching it now, like if their eyesight's still good, like they may be in their 80s or 90s watching this movie, but they got to be blown away watching this. Like, they have never seen this movie like this before, and it just looks magnificent. So I am very impressed with the 4K restoration that was done here with the Nutty Professor by Paramount. This is honestly some of their best work that they've done all year. I thought Flashdance looked great as well. But to me, this looks way better than Red Eye. I thought Red Eye looked fine and Double Jeopardy looked fine, but this is definitely the best 4K that Paramount has done all year. Now, getting into the audio, this does have the DTS HD Master Audio 5.1 that was present on the previous Blu-ray release. There's also a Dolby Digital Mono Track 2.0, and I thought that I kind of shifted back and forth between the two. Both of them sounded great. They both sounded great on the soundbar. I don't think this is a movie that's like too audio intensive. Like, there are scenes like when he's in that classroom and everybody's like chewing and stuff and he's got the hangover, like all that stuff kind of stands out. But other than that, like, there's some great music as well. There's some great scenes in the actual like nightclub at the Purple Pit, some good singing and stuff. But this is not a movie that's really dependent upon like really awesome audio. Now, getting into the special features, and this is where I really want to get into Paramount Presents as a line and really start to praise Paramount a little bit for what they're doing here. Because when this line started, they only did like a new filmmaker focus, and that was it. And it would be like 5 minutes long. Now, it was Leonard Maltin that was doing a lot of those, and also the Adrian Lynn, I think, did a couple in the beginning. And Leonard Maltin still does a special feature in this one. It's about 8 minutes long, and it's great. I love listening to Leonard Maltin talk. Like, he has such a dense knowledge about like all film, especially like the classic films and stuff. So I love listening to him talk about these kind of movies because he comes at it from the perspective of like being there, watching them when he was a kid and just growing up with them. So he has that nostalgia as well. And I just think he provides some really great insight with his little interviews that he does here with the Paramount Presents releases. But the past few Paramount Presents releases, I believe Red Eye had some new special features as well. But this really goes all out with new special features. You have not only that filmmaker focus with Leonard Maltin, but you also have new both sides of the camera, the innovative genius of Jerry Lewis, which is some kind of presentation that they did at the Academy Science and Technology Council. So this thing is like 48 minutes long, or maybe like 45 minutes long. Now, it's from September 12th of 2012, so it's a little bit older, but it was back, but it has Jerry Lewis in it. It's basically this kind of like panel discussion. Like, there's an audience, they're on stage, and they're talking about the Nutty Professor, and they're talking about Jerry Lewis's career. And I watched about half of it. I didn't watch the entire thing, but it's a great feature that they added for the first time. Like, that thing has never been presented on anything else. So it was really cool of Paramount to go back and dig that up and add it to this release. And it's in HD as well. So that was definitely cool that they put it in HD. And there's also a new Jerry Lewis and Frank Tashlin discussion, and it's a phone call discussion. It's an on-the-phone discussion, and they're talking about the Nutty Professor, and Jerry Lewis is basically like, I think Frank Tashlin, I listened to a little bit of this, directed him in a lot of movies back in his career, like before he became a director himself. I think he directed like 8 movies of his. So he's basically like seeking guidance from him on the script and asking like what needs to be changed and what he needs to work on, things like that. So this is the actual phone call that they had discussing the script and talking about some things that he could change and him getting help from his like former mentor. And it's a really cool discussion. I listened to about 10-15 minutes of it. And it's just cool that they have something like that. Like, it's an actual phone call, Jerry Lewis and Frank Tashlin, you know, having this like personal phone call talking about the script to the Nutty Professor. And that's about 48 minutes long of this phone call that they included in here as a special feature. So it says it's in HD, but like I said, this is just audio. They show images and pictures and stuff throughout it, but it's a really cool feature to add. And then on top of that, like that's all the new stuff. They got all of the archival special features from the release that came out back in 2013, 2014. They got legacy featurettes and contents, including commentaries by Jerry Lewis. They do have the commentary in here. And Steve Lawrence, screen test, deleted scenes, bloopers, promos, but all kinds of like older featurettes. in there as well. So this thing is just jam-packed full of special features, and it's a far cry away from where Paramount Presents got started, in my opinion, because when they got started, they were just doing those filmmaker focuses and maybe some trailers, maybe one or two deleted scenes or something, but it was very light on the special features, and they've really started to go all out here. And I think that's a good thing, because if Paramount wants this line to be in competition with Criterion, with Kino Lorber, with Shout Factor, they really got to step their game up and start putting some extra features, especially at the price point that they're charging of $34.99. And I think that Paramount is really starting to show that they're taking this line more seriously, and I like that. I like to see that. So hopefully we continue to see that, and Paramount keeps progressing this line and just making it better, because I think they're starting to really take this line seriously, and I love to see it. So this, to me, is kind of the standout Paramount Presents release, maybe the best one that they've done, to be honest. And this one is really this is a turning point for me, for Paramount Presents. So I think this is one that you should get out there and support for sure. Now, getting into the packaging here, this is a great slipcover. Love the slipcover right there, and I'll show you the back, and you got the special features and some great images as well. And you also got this poster on the inside, which is great. And then taking it out, you got the front, you got the back. Now, you do get a digital code in here, so that's cool, but there is only the 4K disc, so that's one maybe criticism I can say against this, is that you only have that 4K, and they did not. I don't know why they didn't include the Blu-ray, because I'm pretty sure Paramount owns the rights to all of this. I know there's some issues with like 4K rights and Blu-ray rights and stuff, but I don't know why they couldn't just put the Blu-ray in here. I'm pretty sure they did that for Red Eye when it came out, so not sure why they don't have both the Blu-ray and the 4K here. I always hate it when they leave a disc out, especially at the price point of $34.99. But the disc is so great, guys. It looks fantastic. There's some great special features here. The movie's super fun. So if you were on the fence about picking this up, I know $34.99 is a very steep price point, but I really think this is a standout 4K release of 2023, in my opinion. I think this is well worth your money. It's a great release, a standout release for Paramount. So appreciate you guys watching this review of the Nutty Professor. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button if you haven't already. Follow me on all my social media accounts. Those links are down below in the description, and we'll see you next time.